Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we welcome a special guest from Gods Unchained, an Australian project based in Sydney, and that's one of the co-founders, Robbie. How you going?
Good, thanks, Alex. How are you?
Good, thanks. So it was great to meet you guys at EdCon, and Gods Unchained is fantastic. I've checked out the website, and I'll put the link in the description below, guys. But I didn't know you guys were firstly based in Australia, and well done on achieving so much. So tell us a bit of the background behind Gods Unchained.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the initial concept was started around December of 2017, which is when we were entering the space from a development perspective. It originally started with my brother and I, and we made our first game, Etherbots, and then we completed a seed round with Coinbase and a few other investors in May of last year. And we always knew we wanted to build a triple A game, something that was rather than bringing the gaming to the blockchain, it was bringing the blockchain to gaming, something that was already something that people wanted to play for fun rather than being this speculative experience. And we thought that TCGs was the perfect game genre to start in because the fundamental areas of value in the game are centered around these discrete objects, these cards. We had existing physical analogies in the real world from games like Magic the Gathering, where true scarcity was already by virtue a nature of the physical properties of the cards.
Yeah.
We knew it was the perfect thing to do, and the response has also blown us away.
Yeah, I played a bit of casual Magic the Gathering back at uni with a few friends, and it's addictive, all these little card games. But how did you get in touch with Coinbase? And you must have been so excited once they said they wanted to invest in you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We were introed by our investor network here in Australia. Actually, one of our, the people we were talking to were in a very early round in Coinbase, sort of early 2013 or something, or 2012. And so, yeah, they made the intro, and Coinbase had started up their venture arm a few 6 months earlier, and yeah, they loved the idea, and I think they were fundamentally looking for user-facing and user experience-centered projects as well, which I think the space has been missing a little bit of.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about card gaming in general? So maybe a bit of the history. I'm not sure how much you get into that, but certainly where it's got to at present.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually a piece I've penned about this before, a sort of a long history of where it's been and what have been the defining releases in the genre. I suppose the biggest first mover in the space was indeed Magic the Gathering, which is decades old now and has stood the test of time. The last I checked, the market capitalization on the secondary value of cards was something like $21 billion, which is a testament to just how important it is to have real physical assets with real tradability, because that is where the value of a game accrues to in the long run. It's all about that ecosystem, that marketplace, and about the supply of assets. That's what really has been the driving force behind the continuing success of the game. Of course, as well, Wizards of the Coast have put a massive investment into keeping the new seasons fresh. They've got incredible art. They've got incredible game designers. And, all of these things create this amazing experience. But I really think that the ability to trade and create an ecosystem around the game itself has been what's given it such a long lifespan. Then, obviously, the next big entrant into the TCG space from a digital perspective was Hearthstone, which took Magic the Gathering and said, what does this look like in a form that's digestible and accessible for a way wider audience? So 2/3 of their revenue comes through mobile, and they essentially took the rule set and made it something very palatable and very fun and sort of appealing to a wide audience, and obviously are massively successful with over $500 million in yearly revenue. But the lacking element, and the thing they literally didn't have the technology to enable when they started out, was enabling true ownership of their cards. We saw the latest entrant into this space, not in a true ownership model, but certainly in you're allowed to trade your cards model, was Valve's Artifact, which unfortunately has been a bit of a flop, with them losing 99.5% of their active players in the first 6 months of release. There are a few reasons behind that, due to the complexity of the game, them not quite getting the economics right. But to me, I think that the fundamental thing is it's very difficult to go halfway down the model to say, look, players have certain rights to cards and they have certain allowed characteristics of tradability, but at the end of the day, there is no real extractable value, because all you can get is credits, which can be used for other games in the Valve ecosystem. So they're protected by that, and also because they are competing with their players insofar as they're actually selling the same assets that are available to be traded in the marketplace, which is one of our philosophies. Is we never want to do that. It's why we have our seasonal model, where we are balancing the cards and keeping them non-tradable until we essentially launch them, and they become tradable, and we never again originate or mint them. So you have that guaranteed level of scarcity, because we don't want to be in a position where you can go and buy a card off the marketplace, or you can go and buy a card off us as the originators of these digital assets, and one of these has a better expected value, because then either we're undercutting our players or there's no point buying from us at all. So we really are trying to do something which aligns the incentives of us as publishers with the incentives of the players of the game as well.
I think a few people still don't realise that Mt. Gox stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. So were you affected by that at all back in the day, Robbie? Or?
No. I have my own tragic stories of selling crypto far too early, as does everyone, but mine weren't relating to Mt. Gox.
Fantastic. The other thing you touched on there was something we've spoken about a lot, and that is the research that goes into this for the user experience. And, in gambling, they take advantage of all the bells and whistles, the lights and the sounds to get you really drawn in. And obviously playing that in a gaming immersive experience is a level up from card gaming, which makes it very attractive. And we're seeing people spend a lot of money on this stuff these days as well. So what sort of was your light bulb moment when you realized that blockchain can allow to do all these other things that you've just sort of touched on there, or anything else that really excites you?
Absolutely. To me, the key moment was, I think when you look at it from a distribution perspective, and you realize that is really the key player here. If you have to sell a product with blockchain, I don't think you're going to be successful in the space, because our aspirations with Gods Unchained and with the company more broadly has never been to build a niche experience for people already experienced with cryptocurrency that was speculative in nature. It's always been to fundamentally change the way that people own their in-game items and can experience video games at a mass stage. So the aim for Gods Unchained is 1 million players within a year, and that's a commensurate goal for the rest of our ecosystem tools, which we'll be releasing.
Yeah, so one of the big barriers to entry a lot of people have faced is that onboarding. How do I use MetaMask? So how's that experience been so far with getting people on board? And are there plans to sort of, we hear of other projects saying we're going to pay the gas, and we don't want people to have any of that friction when they first get in. So how are you guys treating all that?
Yeah, so recently, a week ago, we actually released a blog post and a video from EdCon, where our CTO, Alex Connolly, outlined the new contracts we'll be deploying, and also some new standards he's developed for the non-fungible token space, which actually allows you to take it from, at the maximum block limit size, creating 50 non-fungible tokens, so 50 cards, to over 3,000 for the same gas price. And that's also all through some really smart abstractions and developments he's made, and also some changes we've been making to how that gas is paid. So we think a lot of it is about user experience, and if you can actually pay and defer the costs of that gas to, say, the first trade you ever make, and it's just taken out of that trade value, that's a much simpler experience for us. So absolutely, we there are lots of people paying the gas, and that's a great idea, but I guess you also have to solve the underlying problem, which is you have to create a sustainable mechanism. If the game gets 1 million players and there's $20 million being traded every day, is it more feasible for us as a company to pay everyone's gas fees, or is it more feasible for us to design a solution where people don't even notice that those fees are being paid, or that those fees are so efficiently traded, and only when you need to make the actual on-chain transaction, they are paid. And of course, we're working with our friends at the 0x protocol to build our marketplace on top of their version 2 in a way that makes it very efficient to make offers on our marketplace.
Yeah, you've touched on so many great points there. We've been huge supporters of 0x since they began. I know you guys said you're blockchain agnostic, so why Ethereum? And I think you just said something really important there, that you guys are already working on little efficiencies. And something that I certainly learned at EdCon is that all these little individual projects are doing their own little scaling and tweakings and whatnot. It's not just waiting for Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation just to roll out all these big changes. So why Ethereum, and what's the thought process there?
Absolutely. And the Ethereum Foundation is doing fantastic work, but we as users of the network can't be dumb in the way we write our contracts or the way we write our code. Actually smartly designing your systems to achieve the desired outcomes with the minimal cost to your end users is a really important step. And as I've said, we've made massive progress to the tune of over 150x in gas reductions for the next season of purchasing and trading cards. Yeah, look, part of the way we did it for us, and I think the reason why we've been able to make a lot of developments very quickly is just from actually shipping a user experience and then being forced to build everything around that. Like, it's very difficult to predict what a user wants or needs in the abstract when you're building protocols and you haven't actually released anything. But if you say, look, we're launching this product and people have to be able to buy it for cheap and people have to be able to trade it and it has to be successful, you have to build the critical path infrastructure to enable that. And that's exactly what we did when we were launching Gods Unchained, the website. There was the F-Coin spam, so the GUI was over 150, and we had to design the deferred gas cost system so people could purchase an arbitrary number of our cards up front for the same fixed gas cost and then activate them discreetly later on at sort of the gas prices they're choosing.
That's absolutely fascinating as well. So what was the non-fungible token? How did that come about? When did you guys learn about it? How far along is ETH with all these standards? Is that something that really draws you guys in as well? And what are all those features and maybe future things that you're excited about with all those standards?
Yeah, so far, I suppose it's mainly been people in the Ethereum ecosystem who have been contributing to the standards. ERC 721, I believe. It was around in its various forms, and I think CryptoKitties formalized it along with Dieter and a couple of the other people, and from then on, it's just been really improved upon. There are some other standards as well. There's ERC 1155, which unfortunately loses sort of the non-fungibility of the individual items. So it doesn't work for us insofar as you have to be able to individually track this particular card was used in this particular way by this particular streamer, right? And that's really essential to us because we think that the amount of additional value you can allow streamers and influencers to capture and create that, essentially the new level of value for your game. Sharing that value with content creators and influencers is just essential to us.
So you just mentioned streamers there. So what is the vision? Have we got 1 million players that are just playing one-on-one, or have we got 8 people around an online table? Or is this sort of, we hear this morning they want to have gaming at the Olympics. So is this all going to streaming and that big sort of platforms, or how do you see it all?
Certainly, sport, video games have gone more and more down the path of esports and more down the path of streaming as well. We certainly plan on embracing that, and we do have plans for, we have written on our website at Battle Royale, and we have some amazing game designers working on exactly what that looks like, and also more collaborative ways of playing card games. Because, most of the fun of online games come from the social gameplay aspect right now. Yeah. And when you combine that with some of the unique value propositions of blockchain, I think you can craft some really interesting and compelling experiences that don't have a non-blockchain equivalent, which is one of the things I'm most excited about. What does decentralization actually unlock in video games that simply isn't possible without it? What does a game look like that can only be built on blockchain?
100%.
We've seen a few precedents of that, but that's what we're really excited about.
Now, you touched on, obviously, all the cards will be, on Ethereum as tokens and whatnot, but you guys decided not to have your own token. So I tend to agree that 99% of utility tokens are a bit of a waste of time, but I think gaming does have some good applications to have utility tokens, but you guys have chosen to go against that. So do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, from us, it was an easy and obvious choice. I won't comment on any specific tokens. I think that in a lot of cases, they're very difficult to maintain. It's very difficult to structure the economics of a token in a way that both accrues value to that token, accrues value to the equity holders of the company, and accrues values to the players of the games. So in our mind, it was so much simpler to say, look, here's the company, we can get investors in, they know what they're getting, there's only one thing you buy, you don't have to worry, am I getting the shorter end of the stick by not buying the utility token here? And then all the value can be delivered to players. And we don't have this third stakeholder to worry about, which is how can we rent seek on behalf of token holders? The other really big thing to us is just when you have a token, it suddenly has to be forced into every interaction with that experience. And that makes it really difficult to be flexible as a company in terms of how you're selling to businesses or how you're selling to players. If we have to force a person coming from regular gaming into decentralized gaming to use an intermediary token in order to purchase, assets in this video game or use a marketplace, that's another layer of friction that could kill your conversion by 90%. So from our perspective, it was much, much simpler to focus on completely ordinary and conventional company structure. And then the only tokens we deal in are non-fungible digital assets.
So, Robbie, what's on the future expansion roadmap for you guys? Is it just onboarding those players next, or what are the other directions that you'd love to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are 100% dedicated to changing the way that gamers own their items and also can interact with the provenance of items. So we fundamentally see this as a way to distribute the assets of games and distribute the values that streamers bring to games in a new and novel way. And everything that's necessary to bring that user experience to the mainstream, we will partner with people who are doing it, or we will build ourselves if we don't think those solutions are good enough. And we're very ambitious. We want to get 1 million players for Gods Unchained within a year, but we also have a lot of plans beyond that. So yeah, stay tuned.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you guys on again in future. But any final thoughts for everyone at home?
Look, come check out the game at godsunchained.com or reach out to me and the team. We're also hiring for over 18 positions currently, and we're moving the team from 25 full-time to 50 by the end of this year.
Well, congratulations. You guys have already achieved so much. So I'm looking forward to having you back on again in future.
Thank you, Alex.
Cheers, guys.